If you follow me on Instagram at Courtney Austin Page, you know that yoga is a huge part of my life and how much I absolutely adore the studio that I teach at here in Delray Beach, Florida. Dandy Light Studio and Bistro offer so many different types of classes and experience for every level of yogi. They also have incredible workshops going on all the time, like sound baths, Reiki, acro yoga, and more. The Bistro is filled with homemade treats by the studio's owner and authentic French pastries from Delray's top-rated bakery, Maison Bouchard. All of the boutique goodies will definitely raise your vibration. Candles, sage, clothing made from all sustainable fashion lines, and so much more. This gem is like a mecca for your soul. Located right next to Pineapple Grove in the heart of downtown Delray Beach, head into Dandylight for some respite from the ruckus. Go to dandylight.com and follow them on Instagram at dandylight_studio to sign up for one of their amazing classes. And as the holiday season approaches, I have a very special gift for you as my listener. Come meet me in person and take my signature Pop Vinyasa class for free on December 10th at 11:30. Pop Vinyasa is a playful approach to yoga set to fun pop music. If you're not local, no worries. This is the first class ever that Dandylight will be streaming live everywhere in the world. So you can also access the recorded class if our time zones aren't compatible. Sign up now at dandylight.com and use code RESUMEYOGA, RESUMEYOGA. And if you are local, stick around and check out their super festive Christmas market taking place that same day, December 10th from 3 to 6 to pick up some high vibe gifts for your loved ones. Can't wait to see you there. Welcome to Resume the Podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Page, and I'm here to spread the message that you can, in fact, be happy in your career. I'm a former executive recruiter turned career coach, and I am obsessed with learning about why people have chosen their career, what led them to that decision, and how they achieved happiness in the process. So, come join the ongoing conversation that exposes you to career paths of all origins with one thing in common: happiness. So, press play and let's resume the conversation with this week's episode. Our guest today is Ben Gold, owner and founder of JobCo. JobCo is a tech startup focused on reimagining the job search through the magic of AI. Ben has spent much of his career in engineering, marketing, and sales before foraying into AI and entrepreneurship. With job markets evolving, Ben demystifies AI, turning it into a robust tool for your career growth. Whether you are an entry-level candidate or a seasoned professional, his AI-driven strategies are tailored to your unique path. And leveraging his diverse experience in both technology and sales, he has crafted winning strategies across sectors like healthcare, technology, telecommunications, energy, financial services, the list goes on. And this cross-industry expertise really infuses his AI-centric coaching with a broad understanding of today's job market dynamics. Ben, thank you for coming on Resume.
Thank you very much. I appreciate being on.
Yeah, and we were just talking a bit offline. You're in Dallas and you have been there for a while now. What's going on in Dallas right now? How is it?
We had a brutal summer. I will say that, like 30, 40 days that are above 100 degrees. So that was a lot of fun. It was a little crazy, but now it's slowly starting to cool down here.
Good. A little relief for you.
Absolutely. Well, Courtney, maybe I can give you a little background about where I've come from, and then we can talk about different elements about AI and how that impacts job seekers, and what are some strategies that people can use to stay current and not get left behind in a lot of these technology innovations.
Yes. But first, I like to start off by asking everybody real quick, if you were at a dinner party, Ben, and you were schmoozing and getting to know people, and someone came up to you and asked you, what do you do? How would you respond?
That's an interesting question. So I help job seekers leverage AI for their career.
And what do people usually respond to you with?
It depends on the conversation. I have two different audiences I speak with. There is an audience that is, I'm talking to investors who I'm looking to invest in my startup. And therefore my pitch is a little bit different because it's about creating a AI powered career coaching platform that helps job seekers navigate the job market. When I'm talking to individuals and I do webinars and one-on-one coaching, then I make it a little bit simpler that I help demystify AI. I help people understand how to leverage it in their career search and frankly, in their life. I mean, once you learn the skills, there's a number of people that once I teach them these certain basics, then you begin to use AI for everything, not just when you're applying for a job, but when you're thinking about any other elements, personal or general career growth.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so usually I kind of like to start at the beginning, but since we're talking about AI and I just think it's so interesting. And as we were talking before we started recording, I told you, like, I am not a super techie person. That is my sister. She is the engineer in the family. Thank God we have one. I am not that person. I mean, we all know that AI is kind of that shiny new tech thing that we all have to wrap our heads around because it's the future and whatnot. For someone who has like an average idea of what it is, can you give us a succinct and clear definition of exactly what AI is?
Wow. So
is that a big ask? I'm sorry.
I want to say this, that AI there's a lot of buzz now, and I'd like to maybe first make a distinction between AI and generative AI, which is a subset of AI. So AI has been around, artificial intelligence has been here for many decades. So when we think of Google search, or when you're on Netflix and it's referring you to the next recommended show, or when Amazon's recommending a product, these are all elements of large corporations that leverage AI in the background. Basically, AI is machines that are crunching large amounts of data to be able to give very quick output that's useful. And typically large corporations are looking at this as a way to sell more stuff to improve their bottom line. Mm-hmm. What has changed, and this is really important because a lot of people don't understand this, that this generative AI is something that is transformative. And I sometimes I feel like I'm a used car salesman when I say this is as big, if not bigger, than the internet. And it's important to be following it and understanding it. So let me walk you through generative AI. So that the idea is they use something called an LLM, which is a large language model. The idea is that ChatGPT, if you take the paid version, they use 1 trillion data points. And you think about that, 1 trillion pieces of data to predict what the next word is going to be in a sentence. So if you log into ChatGPT and you say, yesterday, love was, it will say such an easy game to play, because it would be able to understand through that context that this is most likely about the Beatles song. Now that's a really simple element of what generative AI is. Now, when we're talking about this, and this is really important to look at, is from a practical point of view, you can look at inputs and output. And the input is what information do we give to a generative AI model? There's more than just ChatGPT. There's many that are being developed. There's 2 pieces of data you give. And this is about as technical as I'm going to get. You have a prompt and you have contextual data. So a prompt is a command. And if you've heard of the word prompt engineer, these are people, that's all they do is figure out the best commands to give to an AI model to get the best response. Now, contextual data is information that these 1 trillion data points don't have. So ChatGPT does not know who Ben Gold is, doesn't know who you are, Courtney. So things like my resume, a specific job description are contextual data. Mm-hmm. Now, when you put this together and you say, hi, I am applying for a job. You are a top-notch career counselor, and I would like for you to take my resume and the cover and this job description. I'd like you to give me a compatibility percent. So tell me on a scale of 1 to 100, how compatible am I? Give me an explanation, and then write me a concise cover letter that covers the 2 main areas that I can contribute to the organization. And you give that, and then you just paste the text. It will know this is my resume. It'll know this is a job description. And typically when I will do this in front of an audience at a webinar, there will be gasps in the crowd. It's very similar to like the Matrix taking the red pill.
Yeah.
Because now what happens is that people are able to see, okay, so now it will write a cover letter. So think of it like this, that normally a cover letter, if you really want to write one, it takes 45 minutes. At least that takes me 45 minutes to look at a job, look at my resume, say to myself, gosh, what am I going to say? So here's this is what's
And
compatible.
tailor it and everything. Yeah.
Now you can do that in 5 minutes, and then you need 2 minutes to review it and make sure there's definitely a review. You don't just use AI and then send it out because it will make mistakes. But what it does is that when you see this, then suddenly you understand that this generative AI is an absolute transformational technology, because if I'm a content creator, I can create content in minutes, what used to take hours. So now as you begin to ask the question about how is this going to impact the economy, it's definitely going to be a lot more efficient, but there's going to be displacement. And so one of the things that I teach is an AI first strategy. And that means that in everything that a job seeker does, they should first look at AI, to look at it through that lens. I have a book. So I wrote this book after doing some seminars called Find Your Next Job on using ChatGPT. It's on my website. And it basically goes through the different prompts that people can use in their different phases. So I give you an example. You can use an old resume. You can type a few sentences about what you want to do. And I can have the ChatGPT will give you 5 career fields that matches where you want to go.
Wow. Wow.
Oh, yeah. And I'm just saying that literally. Well, I've had it before where there's a cousin of mine. So I used to do career counseling, even though it was more kind of a part-time fun thing. I used to help people with their resumes, and it would be an arduous task to help somebody to decide what they want. I can now do in 1 hour, I can basically do what used to take me a month, and it will spit out and it will say, well, project management, you're at a 93% compatibility. Here's the reason why you're compatible. Here it is. Sales, you're 90%. Here's the pros and cons. And it literally is able to crunch massive amounts of data in a very short period of time. I use it for building out my resume or teaching people how they can take each of the sections independently, like feed the ChatGPT all the things you've done and say, I need a headline section. Give me the top 5 things that I've done.
Yeah.
Boom, well, it'll do it. Help me to rewrite, redefine certain things. So that, again, this is an example of how you can use AI to become much more efficient. It's always good to have a live human look at the final product before you send it out.
Definitely, for sure.
But it is essential that when I'm counseling other people, I'm like, okay, here's the job you want. You're at a 75% compatibility. And if somebody's at a 75% compatibility in this job market and there's 100 other applicants, basically what I'm showing them is what the applicant tracking system has on the other side. And as a job seeker, to me, it seems very inefficient. I've met people who spent 3-4 months, they have a resume and they've been applying to jobs and they have not taken the time to create an account for ChatGPT. So all of your listeners, if you don't have an account on ChatGPT, start right away, get one, because that's the first thing.
Go do it.
Go and get it. And like I said, if you need a roadmap, again, my book on my website is where you would have the roadmap wherever you're at inside of your journey, as far as what you should do in each phase, because you can use it for networking. How do you take somebody's social media profile and understand what's important to them? Or you have an upcoming interview. Here's my resume, job description, and the social media profile. Write me 5 icebreaker questions or ideas of how I can stand out, because it would be able to look and say, you both have 10 years of this kind of experience. You both are interested in the environment. I mean, these are the kinds of insights that generative AI can give you to make it so that you are better prepared once you find an opportunity where you're moving through the stages.
And I love that, because something that you just did there, which you are being humble and you're not pointing it out, but you're connecting humanity and technology. So a huge part of the interview process is really just connecting to the person who's interviewing you. I mean, obviously, of course, there's skills and experience and all of that has to go into it, but doing your research and knowing who's interviewing you, who's going to be the one in the room with you, and creating that connection with them is really important, which is why, and you know this, but just for listeners, that's why it's so important to research that person before your interview, so you can create a bit of a foundation, a bit of that, the beginnings of hopefully a long relationship. and having this technology do that for you. So you're not spending the hours that we have been spending on the resume, on the cover letter, figuring out how to even upload it and get it into the applicant tracking system and in front of somebody's eyes. Like that all takes so much time. And then also having to do this kind of personal research on somebody, condensing that is so, so valuable.
That is so true that when we look at generative AI from a job seeker tool, its efficiency and effectiveness. That is, you're going to be able to write better information, or you'll be able to give better content that is more desired for your audience. However, the other element is now that people are using it, it's becoming a necessary tool, because if your competitor for that job is using AI and you're not, they're going to be that much more efficient, that much more effective. So it's just important for people to learn how to use that tool.
Yeah. And so let's say people go through everything and they end up getting the job. How does AI help someone who just was recently hired and needs to kind of make a name for themselves in their new position and wants to kind of be able to acclimate into the company culture quickly?
That is a great question. And there's a couple of different ways to answer that. So organizations are right now incorporating as best they can this new technology. Every day there are announcements that are sometimes mind-blowing on some of the advances in technology. But so it really depends on the role and the industry. So for example, someone that is a marketer, there are tools out there that will help you to create content very quickly. So for example, ChatGPT is one of them. There's other apps. There's apps being built every day that leverage the AI, but then allow you to either create SEO content, ad pages, Facebook posts, LinkedIn posts. There's a lot of these social media. I don't know if you're leveraging any of those right now, but like I've spoken to some podcasters that use like Cast Magic and some of these other tools, which take, for example, a podcast, then it's able to discern it, put it into smaller elements. And so these are the tools of helping people to make better content, as an example.
Yeah. So we're recording right now on Riverside. And so I started this back in June. Well, I was recording back in May, and now it's October for reference. And since then, they have actually started with, they call it magic clips, I think. And it does that. So it will take the whole recording and you press like the edit button. I'm not forgetting, but you press a button and it will splice it up into different little clips, like 2-minute clips or whatever. And then there are some other ones that will do that. And it will actually give you like the percentage of like 99% like relatability because of XYZ things that you talk about in this clip. And with the time, like if it's, I think on TikTok, there's something, it's like 7 seconds is like how to get the most amount of views, because that's where our attention span is. It's sad, but that's like how it works. I know. Anyway, so yes, there are so many now though. So one question that was coming up when you were talking, there are a lot of new apps that come up like every day with like use AI, and it's like a magic button and it will condense everything for you and clip it for you and edit it for you. How do you know which ones are good and which ones aren't?
That's one I go through the same thing you do, which is I will go and to websites and I will test them out. Most of them will give a free trial. And depending upon what it is, like I'm wanting to put together some explainer videos. So I found a really good example of a voiceover where I can just put the text and it creates an AI voice. I think the one I had was a British accent that sounded really good. I'm still trying to figure out how to do like an animated video through AI by myself. I refuse to hire somebody to do it, and I'm still working on that. But the point being is that this is a question of trial and error. Now, one thing that you realize is that everything you're describing is made possible through generative AI. So what you see there, even though you're technically not doing the actual work, that is the next phase, is people that create apps that do all of the commands, that have the prompts and the contextual data in the background, and they're telling it to do certain things. The thing though is to say that if my job is to edit videos, for example, I might be in trouble because now all of a sudden there's an app out there that can do the job that I did. And this is perhaps the most dangerous thing for job seekers in general, is to be very aware of what is my industry? What is it? What is my magic talent? how do I either reinvent myself? So I feel like a lot of people are going to need to reinvent themselves in the coming couple of years because there might be skills. And again, I think of marketing and HR as probably the two roles or organizations inside of companies that this technology is steamrolling over. Because again, typically like what you just described, if you think of that, of your podcast element, if you think of a marketing division for a large company, usually you have somebody who's a video editor. You have somebody who's a content creator. You have somebody else who's in dealing with SEO, a copywriter. And maybe there's 10 people that are doing that. And now you could have 7 people with the help of these AI apps do the same amount of work.
Right.
That's a really important thing. And so if you're employed, my recommendation is to be very cognizant of what are the apps. Be out there, maybe experimenting on your own of some apps and suggest them to the company. Because I do feel that there is this saying that AI won't replace people, but people that know AI will replace people. And that is partially true. That is, it will go from being ahead of the curve to just being on the train, knowing AI. That'll be one of the things that's happening in our economy right now.
So for people who are video editors and all those people that we just mentioned, copywriters, video editors, other than knowing AI and knowing the new apps that are coming out, what do you see as a future for those types of careers? Other than using AI within that function, what do you see as the future of any of those types of kind of creative careers that are now being, I don't know what the word is, roboticized?
And this is a large conversation. So typically whenever there's a new technology, we always said, hey, when the internet came out, it's going to cause chaos, but people actually, there are more jobs created. If you even go back further, when computers came out, or when you go back to 200 years ago with the Industrial Revolution, every time we came up with a technological advance, we displaced certain industries, but we created more jobs that allowed people to continue working. Where AI is a little bit different is, I'll give you an example here because I actually can show you that. So I went ahead and said to ChatGPT, I said, last week they came up with this new possibility. This is my resume. Okay. So I took a picture of my resume.
He's showing me his phone and it's a picture of his resume. Okay.
Picture of my resume. So now listen to this. You can now take a picture as of last week and it will be able to tell you everything about that picture. So I took a picture of my resume and I'm just going to read to you. Take a look at the following resume, give an evaluation for both content and formatting. And it gave me basically a page of information. It says, this is an old resume of mine. It says clear indication of the role being is senior sales engineer. The summary section provides a concise overview of the professional's expertise and experience. So it's literally it gave me 7 points of pros, 4 cons about the content of the picture I took. It's like formatting, and it gives me elements of what's formatted correctly and not. So just to understand that it's able, and my father who has memorabilia, he wanted to know about a Japanese magazine he bought. And I took the picture and it translated everything on the cover and explained what it was and gave context about it. And so think about that if there are people that get paid to evaluate pictures. I mean, if I was I showed this to my daughter's math tutor. She has a math tutor and she came over last week and I told her that I am Dad GPT. And
I love that.
And so, of course, my daughter, when she's given really stupid homework, I will sit down with her and help her to navigate. And it's actually pretty funny to do this together. But when I showed it to her math teacher, looked at me and said, so first of all, she goes, what's GPT? And I said, this is ChatGPT. And I showed her, I said, give me a problem. And so this is before the picture ability. And so I just wrote it down and it solved it. And I showed her that, hey, it just solved it right here. Her answer to me her question was, I'm retiring in 3 years. Will I make it?
Wow. Yeah.
Because right now with this new capability, you snap a picture of your math problems. It will go through each question and tell you how to solve each problem from a picture.
So this brings up a good point because I saw and maybe other people saw it too. I feel like it was kind of like a viral thing where there was a professor, a college professor who said no using ChatGPT because everybody started using ChatGPT to write these really long essays and thesis and papers and whatnot. So how does ChatGPT fit into education? I mean, is it going to evolve in a way that we just have classes on ChatGPT now, or that it's worked into lesson plans on how to kind of teach math in a more efficient way?
Man, there's two different directions. One direction is you don't need to teach it. You don't need to teach people because the AI will do everything for us.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So like if you're talking about how generative AI disrupts industries, we can take education as an example. I believe that the current situation where people go to school, they sit in a chair, they get bored for 45 minutes and they get out of their chair and go somewhere else. That is, I thought that with our pandemic that we learned that there's other ways to learn. But after the pandemic, we go back to this. And I'm like, well, I don't think the education system really learned how to leverage technology. Now, I have seen like a really cool thing from Khan Academy. It's an educational website where they would have an AI assistant. So you get stuck and then it would help you to understand, oh, you're stuck on this problem. And you can write in and ask a question. Hey, I don't understand what they're saying. And it would be like your personal math tutor that wouldn't tell you the answer, but would tell you kind of what you need to look at in order to get to the end. And so
that's amazing.
And that is out there right now. You know, what I just described to you with the picture and the fact that it was that you literally take the picture, say, solve the problems, it will do that too for you. And it is a hard thing to do. But what I will tell you is that when I do meet some of my daughter's friends whose parents say, you can't use ChatGPT. And I'm like, that for me, I'm like, use it. I said, this is out there. And the thing is that the rate of innovation is absolutely astounding. Like each week there is a watershed event. So last week it was that ChatGPT did this, plus Amazon just invested $4 billion in Anthropic, which is a competitor to ChatGPT. Okay. So now you have Meta, they're creating their own LLM. Okay. So these large language models, you've got ChatGPT, which is in front, but you've got Meta, Apple, Google, and Amazon. They're all building their own competitive large language models because they understand that. And then those large language models are inside of all their products. Right. So now when you're in, so the question is, some of this generative AI is happening behind the scenes without people understanding it. I still think that, like, if I'm a sales rep, I should know ChatGPT very well, because a sales rep needs to be able to go above and beyond in personalization. If I have a sales meeting coming up, I want to do my research and truly be able to get as much detail as I can before I make my presentation.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of sharing with you that this is something where it's happening so fast. We haven't had time to think about the ethical elements of this. Like, is it ethical that we're going to be displacing so many people? There's going to be a lot of career transitions because of this. Mm-hmm. There's also, I'll give you another example. So we're talking an industry that's getting upended. We'll talk about the writer's strike. Okay?
I was like about to bring that up. Yep.
That's another industry where, so I'm going to say, normally I would say in 5 years, but every time I've said something's going to happen in 5 years, 2 weeks later, it happens. I mean, that's how fast people are doing this. Imagine a world where I want to create a new episode of The Big Bang Theory. Okay. Now, there will be a day where you can feed the past 12 seasons into The Big Bang Theory and press a button and churn out a new season that takes place in 2023. Maybe, Courtney, you want to be part of it. So we take your picture, your voice print, and we add you as one of the actors that's next. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing is, when you think of an episode of The Big Bang Theory that costs $9 million to make one episode, it employs 100 people, or let's say 50, 100 people. Yeah. So what happens when then the future has these AI generated movies? We don't have to pay these pesky actors, voice people, and sound artists, caterers, cameramen, and you just have AI use something in the past or start from zero, create a story from scratch.
Right.
And so then you say, if I'm a cameraman, maybe suddenly that there's 20% less movies being made the normal way. Again, this is how all of these professions, it might not happen overnight, but it happens. And what I think that the striking actors did a really smart thing, because they understood that if they give their voice print and they get a one-time fee for their picture and their voice print, they can be used over.
Indefinitely. Right. Yeah.
And that would be morally reprehensible, because you suddenly, it's like saying, I'll pay you $200, but you just can't make money ever again on the thing that you used to make money. So I don't know whether they prevented this from happening or if they just delayed it. But it
Okay.
was a smart thing I understand that they built in some sort of residual income for the use of their likeness, something like that. Haven't gone through the details of the agreement.
Yeah, it's so complicated. I mean, ethically, it's so complicated because how do you, and I just wrote down intellect versus ChatGPT. Like, how much are we sacrificing our innate curiosity and our innate intellect and our desire to cultivate that intellect to AI, which in and of itself is this huge cumulative expression of so much research and intellect and all of that. It's almost like, are we destroying ourselves? Are we destroying our own culture from this? And just acting. I love that you brought up acting. I did a lot of acting in the day. I have a lot of clients that are in that industry, and it's an art. It is such an art and a craft. And it's very threatening to a whole history of this art. And you can use that across industries. Every industry has its own where it came from. But yeah, it's how do we move forward without destroying our creative impulses and creativity?
I'm just curious here, have you seen some of the image generation from AI? So give you an example. And that's a really good question here about it, because it's hard to say, are we enhancing our creativity by now being everybody is an artist. Everybody can create, as opposed to where being an artist was an elite thing that you got paid because you had a special skill. But now all I got to do is type in, I want to have a raccoon painted by the Starry, Starry Night thematic, and it will create that for me. Matter of fact, there is, like, we're talking about groundbreaking things. So ChatGPT the OpenAI is the company that owns ChatGPT, and they have another product called DALL-E. And the DALL-E is in version 2. And version 2 is okay. Like, I would say, write me a picture of Abraham Lincoln and Albert Einstein drinking a Starbucks in Central Park, and they could do an okay job of something like that. But the DALL-E 3, version 3, which has not been released yet, but should be released in the next week, I've seen some samples of it, and it is mind-boggling how much better that is. Like right now, the image.
Oh my God.
So right now, the image generation, you've got somebody with 6 fingers. You've got that their feet don't quite look right. The letters are a little bit out of place, but it kind of gets the essence of what you're trying to get. The next generation of image creation is going to be much more realistic and much more detailed and much more authentic. And so it's just going to continue to get better and better. But again, every time that innovation happens, then you say, what do you do to somebody who's a logo designer, who is a creative artist? Suddenly, do I really need to hire someone to be a creative artist? Because now I've got this image generation. So you can see every time I see a new iteration, it begs the question, what job is being threatened? What profession is going to disappear because of this new innovation?
Right. It's very interesting. And it's just to go back to what you were talking about with the pandemic and how we didn't really learn from it in terms of education, what we could have, instead of just sending our kids back like 5 days to sit. I totally understand that. But I was just thinking, it's almost as if we're back in the day when the internet was coming out, people saying no to the internet, just like, no, it's going to be too disruptive. It's going to be too, and this feels very similar where it's like, this is too scary. This is too threatening. This is too disruptive, but it just keeps coming out and evolving at a much more rapid pace than the internet did when it came out. So how can someone who's interested in AI and interested in learning about it what does somebody do with this? Like with all of this information about AI and jobs and job searching, what do we do? What do we do, Ben?
Okay. A couple of things I would say. So on my website, bengoldai.com, I have the ability. So I do consulting and people can book meetings with me. I have my book and I have a weekly newsletter. I call it AI Career Edge. I can send that to you.
We're going to include every link, everything in our show notes. So when you're done listening to the episode, you can just go down and you can find everything that Ben's talking about.
So there's that part there, but I'm going to say that mine, I've decided specifically to focus on AI and careers because I think that is when there's a lot of AI experts out there and it can be very overwhelming. I can tell you that I get overwhelmed when I see these new innovations and I test them out and I'm just like, wow. So I'll tell you 2 other newsletters that I think are really good. One is called Superhuman and one is called The Neuron. I think those are really good as far as giving people the daily updates of the innovations happening in AI. And it is important. I recommend, number 1, subscribe to 10 newsletters. Yes. I mean, wake up in the morning and very quickly, I also subscribe to Google News Alerts. So Google Alerts, and I have AI recruiting, AI jobs. So for example, today, LinkedIn just announced their entire generative AI suite of recruiting technologies and AI coaching for job seekers. And it was pretty mind-boggling what it is. And that's just an example of right before I got on this call, I've been furiously looking through a bunch of these articles, trying to understand, wow. So these large corporations are all investing millions, if not billions of dollars into this technology so that it's just a part of what they offer. So that would be a thing. But I would say to somebody is type in your industry and AI and create Google alerts and just really be curious. I feel like the part that blows my mind is I'm like, it's just a question of being curious. You don't have to be a programmer. I'm not a programmer or data scientist, but I really do spend a lot of time trying to understand what's out there so that I can do these kinds of conversations and be able to give some better information.
Sure. Yeah.
And there's not really, that's the thing is that because it's like, if I remember 6 months ago that there was an appeal where Elon Musk and a bunch of these other people said, hey, we need to pause AI development for a year while we're deciding, and because they understood these consequences. We need to stop what we're doing and reassess the ethical implications of all the different things that we're creating. And I look at that and I'm like, that's kind of like Cyberdyne Systems I don't know if you know the Terminator movie, but that was like the evil corporation. It's like Cyberdyne Systems saying, we need to rethink this cyborg thing.
Let's take a hot sec, guys.
The cat's out of the bag, and the people that are the unethical actors, the foreign governments so you can think of every country, China, Russia, Iran, they're all going to be building their own LLMs. And they're going to be using it to hack. They're going to be using it to steal. They're going to be using this to spy on their own people. Now they can spy much more efficiently. So think about, for example, what I just showed you with the resume. Imagine that you have a video or something and you just run this all through AI and say, find anything suspicious. So now you don't have to have as many people looking at stuff. You just have computers evaluate it and point out, a traitor. So there's a lot of different directions this can go.
Yeah. And what just popped into my mind, if you're just graduating or looking for a career transition, if you're like, I'm not happy in what I'm doing, what do I do next? Cybersecurity, that's going to be huge, right? With all of this coming up and all of the geopolitics is going to get so much more. I mean, it's already a cyber Cold War and all of that. It's just going to become even more and more entrenched in cyber issues and cybersecurity issues.
Absolutely. That is definitely one. I mean, I do talk to students and help them to understand that this is a good time for them to determine their career objectives. They're in that lucky period where they're kind of not forced. They can kind of have that element of what do they want to do and what are the kinds of opportunities that are out there. So I definitely enjoy talking to that crowd.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was going to make a suggestion. I'd like to maybe give you the quick, because I don't think I told you at the beginning my story. And so maybe I give you.
I was just going to say, I want to know how you got into this. I think our audience should have a little bit of an idea of like, why are you here talking about AI? What was it about AI? Where did you start? So we're talking about college. What did you study in college?
I studied international relations and economics. I was going to be a diplomat. You did.
I studied poli-sci and English, but so poli-sci and international relations. Muhlenberg College. Shout out to Muhlenberg, which is in Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Okay. So I studied undergraduate American University, graduate Johns Hopkins. They have a center in Bologna, Italy. And that's where I learned I lived in Europe for about 10 years. I was going to be like a negotiator, ambassador, or work for the US government. That was my goal, to be a diplomat. Okay. And there were a couple of things that happened where I realized it was not going to be the direction I'm going, and decided to, and when I was doing some work in Romania, and I was on a consulting assignment, met my wife, brought her back to Dallas, started all over about 20 years ago, and started in the HR tech space. And that was really where I started as a sales rep. Then I moved to what is a sales engineer, which is more technical sales. Got a chance to work in multiple industries. And for the last 5 years, I was with a company that was call tracking, call analytics, and they had a really cool AI product that I just spent so much time on. And so even this is before ChatGPT, it was this idea of, it was its own AI model, but it was, what I was just fascinated with is that the company was able to take 30,000 phone calls and crunch the data and come up with all these insights. And companies that had no idea, like they recorded calls, but had no idea what was going on. And we were able to tell them, hey, these are happy customers. These are unhappy. And so I spent a lot of time on that. So then I was let go at the beginning of the year and started this journey of the first couple of months. I was applying for jobs. I was using ChatGPT. And I realized that there's that the job seeker perspective, that even if you've got AI, that LinkedIn, once you press the apply button, there's really like the Wild West from apply up to you get a job offer. Yeah. So I came up with this idea of a startup, Jobco, which is a AI powered career coaching portal, which takes all of this from when you are you apply for a job. Okay. This would take all the questions of compatibility, writing a cover letter, understanding strengths and weaknesses, the interview process, the salary negotiation, putting that all into a Salesforce-like experience where it's all in one place, but personalized AI coaching. So that's the startup that I began, and I'm in the process of looking for investors. So I've gotten as far as I can from a bootstrap point of view, but I started to reach out to job seeker communities doing consulting, coaching, and suddenly realized that like you said to me, Courtney, that a lot of people are like, AI, what's that? And I have been teaching them that, a lot of the AI innovations are going to be in the back end, but it's really important to understand what generative AI is, how to create your own prompts. And again, I came up from the conversations with my book that I wrote specifically to address those people that have never logged into ChatGPT. How can you start from zero and be able to understand this new phenomenon?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Hold on. I want to go back real quick. So when you came back to Dallas and you said that you started all over and you started in the HR tech space, what was HR tech back then when you started?
Back then it was payroll. So I worked for Paycheck, and it wasn't really, it was more sales than tech. So back in the day, I would actually have people sign actual paper information, stuff like that for the first couple of years in the early 2000s. However, quickly we began to sell software as a service and people buying payroll.
Right.
SaaS. Yeah. So then I got into benefits enrollment and insurance and applicant tracking and talent acquisition. I switched companies a little bit. And so that I've always stayed in the technology space. I've always felt very comfortable there. And the last 12 years, I've been in this role of a sales engineer, which is between sales and between technical. And that has also been a really good journey because I've been able to see innovation, work with product teams, data science teams, marketing to really make sure that were projecting the right way. And I give a lot of feedback when I'm on the front lines because the sales engineers are the ones that do the demos and allow the presentations to the client when it's trying to sell to clients.
Yeah. And it's so funny. When I was executive recruiting, one of the positions that I was always filling for one of our clients was a sales engineer for different territories in the US. And for those who aren't familiar with sales engineers, they are a rare breed because you need to have that technological understanding and interest while also having the communication and verbal presentation skills and relationship building skills. And those two things don't always come in one package. And so that it's if you're an engineer who is looking for a little bit more face to face with people and you don't want to be just stuck in engineering all day, or if you're a people person, but you've always had this aptitude for something more technical, sales engineer is a great position. And it's really interesting. And I would suggest looking into that. So I love that that's part of your career journey because I spent a lot of sales engineers in my day.
It's funny because I think of that journey and it actually made me pretty well equipped for when I decided to start up my own company that I found my partner. This is a couple that the husband is a CTO, so he handles all of the infrastructure that is Amazon Web Services and the back end security of the website. His wife is a product person, so she built out the product. And the skills I have is for everything else, the marketing, the investor relations, as well as the development of the product from a conceptual point of view. And so it's been a really good partnership. And I do think that the sales engineering role for me has been a good one over the years. I've really appreciated the people I've met and the skills I've made.
Yeah. What are the main skills, like the most valuable skills that you've been able to use throughout your career and into this new venture? Like what have been like in terms of transferable skills, I guess is what.
So it's communication. And a sales engineer has to identify their audience very quickly because if you lose your audience, that's a big thing. And so I have spent a lot of time understanding the audience because I've had a new audience, and an investor audience is very different than an audience of someone who is looking to buy an enterprise product. Mm-hmm. Talking, for example, to podcasters, I am learning to adjust pretty quickly to make sure that the conversation fits the desired elements that is that the audience that you're looking to reach, that it's compatible. And so sure. So being a sales engineer has been good because that is something that learning how to start a presentation and realize, oops, what we thought we were going to talk about suddenly changed instantly because someone in the room said something and you got to stop on a dime and reconfigure and say, oh, based upon what you just said, can you expand on that? And then maybe it has to go in a different direction. I think that flexibility is something I've learned over the years.
Do you think that was a natural kind of talent that you had and you just continue to cultivate it? Or was that something that you realized that you needed to have in order to be successful? So you kind of paid more attention to creating a skill?
I find and I say this, that I'm still learning. Like I did last week, a pitch event where I actually had 4 minutes to pitch to investors. And I'm going to say that I always have learning to do. That communication, there were some comments that the investors made about our product, and I was surprisingly, I didn't communicate. Granted, in 4 minutes, it's really tough.
I was going to say that's a tight time frame and a big ask to do.
Well, that's how it works today, is that investors will you've got their undivided attention for 4 minutes. It's hard to encapsulate, but that's a communication skill. The people that can encapsulate who they are, what they're creating, why it's impactful, and why they're the right person to execute. That is in itself what is necessary from an entrepreneurial point of view to obtain money. And so when you ask me, like, did I have natural talent? I feel like I've had to really develop it because I love to talk, and it's important to stop and listen and ask questions at the right time. That is something that I learn from, and everybody can.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And it goes back to, we were talking about the writer's strike and acting. And one of the big things in acting, if you have like no, interest or have ever spent any time like learning about acting, one of the first things that you're taught is acting is reacting, which is basically listening is one of the most people think about actors and they're just talking and on stage. One of the biggest things is listening. And I think that what you're talking about is as a communicator, listening is probably, if not more important than just being able to do the pitch that you rehearsed 1,000 times.
Yeah. And so I'm going to say that is a continual process. And I want to, because I've also, and again, I think of this, that it's important to be respectful of everybody that I interact with, because that just is something that's really important, because I've seen people that have been disrespectful or even like in my job search process where people, the way they didn't respond or didn't react, I try to be as responsive to people just in my overall, in what I do, because that's also something that is just really important. I feel like what goes around comes around, and it's important that how you treat other people is very important, because that's how they're going to treat you.
Mm-hmm. And also just when you're dealing with the job search and now entrepreneurship, there's a lot of inherent rejection that just happens. It's just on a numbers. So how do you keep that positive mindset going through all of that?
I will tell you one thing that I learned on LinkedIn is the moment that you become a CEO of a company, I get about 5 to 10 LinkedIn messages now of people trying to sell me stuff. Mm-hmm. Everything from being healthy to software development services to marketing services to whatever. And once in a while, I mean, if somebody has funding, I am more than happy to talk to them about their funding strategy and how they could potentially help me raise money. But and I've learned to be polite and just say, hey, thank you, but I'm right now not looking. And I try to do that, to at least respond and be nice.
Because it's easy not to.
Because I'm like, well, I want people that I want to get the people that are wanting to follow me for my thought leadership, which is something I have to fight for. And those are the kinds of responses I'm looking for. But I figured that as I build out my profile and as I build out my social media strategy, that will come.
Okay, awesome. So you've been super generous with your time, and I think we covered so much, but I have 3 really quick rapid fire questions for you. What is the best career advice you've ever been given?
I will tell you a story. I remember this moment when I was a frustrated sales rep, and I remember one of the senior sales executives, who also was one of my best friends, kind of says, Ben, I want to take you for lunch. And he looked at he looked on the board and where my sales were, and he said to me, I don't think you are in the right role. And he said, I think you're much smarter. And here are some different things that people do. And you should rethink your career goals, because I think you'll be happier. And that's how I went from sales to pre-sales very quickly afterwards. So I can think of that conversation and the fact that this person who took the time to sit down with me and have that pivotal conversation, that was probably the best advice I ever got.
Oh, that's so nice. Yeah, because he could have just not, right? Yeah. Okay, what is the worst career advice?
Let me reformat it, and this might not answer your question, but I have been in very difficult career situations where I've had a manager, and I had a particular situation where I had a manager who did everything she could to make sure that I never got it. Like, I stayed in a box. Like, I could do certain tasks, but I never traveled or got to interact with other people in the company or be able to move on into other roles. She made sure that didn't happen. And so what I learned from that was, I'm going to go find another job, which I did, because it was too toxic. So It wasn't so much advice, but I would say that being in a toxic work environment, it's important to evaluate what else is out there, what can you do, and how can you find that escape path?
Yeah. And I think what I'm getting is also just if something is off, right? If it feels off, it probably is. So, okay. And what is a favorite quote of yours or song, or like a pump up song that you like, a go-to pump up song? Either one is fine.
There's that Spider-Man quote, the one to where there's much power, there is responsibility. I forget. Okay.
Oh yeah. With great power comes great responsibility.
Yes, with great power comes. Yeah. I always think of that And the reason I see that as an important foot, because I'll give you a corollary. Be nice to all the people on the way up. They're the same people you're going to meet on the way down. And that is
Good one.
That's what I live with, is this idea that sometimes if you're up, but you treat other people nicely that might not be up that moment, then that's going to work in your favor down the road.
Oh, I love that. Ben, this has been such an interesting conversation, and I feel like I want to go on ChatGPT now and play around. Thank you so much, Ben. This was so amazing, and everybody go to ChatGPT right now. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode. I'm so grateful for your precious time and energy. And if anything resonated with you, please feel free to share with a friend and subscribe. If you're interested in career coaching, I would love to hear from you. Email me at Courtney@resume-careers.com and follow me on Instagram at Courtney Austin Page. Thank you so much and see you next week.